All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our fourth quarterly public meeting of the year. I'm just going to give everyone a few minutes as I see people are still joining the webinar, and we'll go ahead and get started in the next minute to 90 seconds. And for those just joining us, just letting you know, we're going to get started in just under a minute here. Just want to give folks a chance to join so we can have as many participants hear the presentation from the top as possible. All right, it looks like we've stopped seeing people come in, so we're going to go ahead and get started so we can be on time this evening. Once again, thank you for joining us for our fourth quarterly community meeting here at the Bellwether District. This will be our last virtual community meeting of the year. Just a couple of, well, first of all, for those of you who weren't at our last meeting and wondering who I am, my name is Amelia Alcivar. I am Executive Vice President of Corporate Affairs for HRP Group. We're the developer of the Bellwether District. I am filling in for my fantastic colleague, Mia Fioravanti, who usually leads these meetings. She is wrapping up her maternity leave in the next couple of weeks, so Mia will be back with you for our Q1 meeting next year. But I'll do my best in the meantime to make sure that we're able to get through our presentation, get to your questions. A couple housekeeping items off the top. A reminder that we post a recording of this meeting, we post the presentation slide deck, and we post a written transcript of the Q&A plus answers to any questions we're not able to answer during the meeting on our website within 30 days of each of these meetings. So by December 12th, all of that will be available on our website if you need to refresh your memory or if you want to share with any of your friends, colleagues, or fellow community members that weren't able to attend. We do that for all of our meetings. They're all available on our website if you're ever looking for something you remember hearing or missed a meeting and want to go back. Secondly, or finally, before we get started, a reminder that we are going to be using the Q&A function to ask questions. Feel free to put them in. The Q&A function is the little box with the question mark in it at the bottom of the screen. I will read the questions out loud and either myself or one of our team members will answer. Any questions that we don't get to or we can't answer in this meeting, we will include those in a written Q&A that we post on our website. And we're also happy to follow up with individuals if you have a question and want to get an email if we need to answer your question more fully following the meeting. And I'll mention that again once we get to Q&A. Feel free to add your questions anytime throughout the presentation. They're not disruptive at all, but we will most likely save questions until the end unless it really makes sense to stop mid-presentation and answer one. But don't hesitate to put them in there so we can get your question answered as quickly as possible. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. If we can go to the next slide. A quick run through of our agenda. We'll do, this was the welcome. Each of our team members will introduce themselves as they speak at our various updates. We're going to have I'll go through a couple of overview slides, just reorienting everyone with the project. If it's been a little while for any of those joining us, or if you're joining us for the first time, we'll then do an update, a more granular update from our industrial development team. We'll do the same with our innovation campus team. We'll do an update on environmental remediation. We'll do a update on community and workforce development with a little bit of a deep dive on our community benefits commitment that we recently executed with our community advisory panel members, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, get everybody on their way. Go to the next slide. We always like to start with a reminder and an update on the public benefits of this project, sort of writ large, and those span a number of different categories. From an economic development perspective, we've already committed with our partners $1 billion to the development of the Bellwether District. The significant portion of those funds were committed to deconstructing, abating the refinery, removing all the refinery infrastructure. As you can, those of you who've been to South Philly sometime in the last year and a half or so can see, the site is all the fossil fuel infrastructure has been removed from the above grade portion of the site, and we continue to work through what we call horizontal development, which includes the below grade demolition of the site. And then we also, have a environmental remediation program that my colleague Juliana will talk about in a little bit. In terms of a revenue generation perspective, the project is projected to, at full build, generate about $100 million in Philadelphia city tax revenue and about $120 million in tax revenue for the Commonwealth. We've recently coalesced around a $10 million community benefits commitment that I'm going to speak to a little bit later. We have an ongoing scholarship commitment to South and Southwest Philly students. That's with Community Colleges of Philadelphia, and we open that annually for applications. All of that information can always be found on our social media and our website. And then we have invested over $150,000 to date in local parks and community tree planting outside of our site to, bring the greening that we plan on site into the community. We have a community advisory panel that helps us ensure that we're fully, have an open dialogue with all of the communities in the 5 zip codes that surround our site that consists of 25 organizations and institutional stakeholders. From a job creation perspective, the project at full build, which is a 10 to 15 year timeline, is projected through a third-party economic impact study to create 19,000 approximate direct permanent jobs and 28,000 construction jobs. And we have a very robust career-connected learning program with the School District of Philadelphia to ensure that students in Philadelphia, particularly in our 5 zip codes around the site, have access to the skills training and workforce opportunities so they can take advantage of those jobs. And to date, in the 4 years since we started, and really, kind of 2 years since we've started in earnest, we've had 120 interns that have been, paid internships for high school students employed with us or our contractor partners, and 1,300 students engaged through various career awareness training programs. And we have committed a total to date of $2 million in workforce development investment. And that's something we anticipate continuing and moving into skills training programs for some of the permanent jobs. A number of our investments to date have focused on trades and construction job opportunities. From a transportation connectivity standpoint, we're focused on reintegrating this closed off part of Philadelphia. There are very, very little infrastructure on this site because it had really been inaccessible for over 100 years. And so that's a significant endeavor involving 8 miles of new internal streets and infrastructure improvements, new bike and pedestrian connections, working with the city to ensure complete street standards are met, and significant offsite infrastructure improvements to improve traffic flow accessibility. And then we, also are at HRP, one of our missions and central pillars is to build as sustainably as possible. So we are, anticipating LEED certified buildings. We are projecting that there will be 10,000 new trees built on site, as well as other green infrastructure like bioswales to absorb CO2. We're building electric vehicle ready facilities and EV charging capability. We anticipate about 6 million square feet of solar on our rooftops. So building those solar ready rooftops, which is a really significant amount in an urban setting. And we're working to rebalance the site to raise low-lying areas out of the floodplain by moving soil from the higher areas to move the entire site out of the 100-year floodplain and building pads out of the 500-year floodplain. And then overall, what is the to date from the work we've done to remove the former refinery infrastructure? The refinery was responsible for 16% of Philadelphia's emissions. That's based on a report that was commissioned by the city several years ago. That equates to 3 million metric tons per year of CO2. That's essentially completely reduced now that refining operations have ceased and the infrastructure is gone. That included 950 miles of pipeline, which I always like to give the stat that is enough pipeline to stretch from Philly to about Jacksonville, Florida. So it's a lot. And 18.5 million gallons of petroleum product was removed when we deconstructed all of the above ground storage tanks and other refinery units. And we always seek to recycle or reuse as much material as possible. To date, we have either recycled or reused 280,000 tons of material. Go to the next slide. This is a reminder of our phase one schedule. Phase one includes the first two buildings on the industrial campus, which is the southernmost 750 acres of the site, and then the first three buildings on the innovation campus, which is the northernmost 250 acres of the site. Demolition was substantially complete in Q1 of this year. Environmental remediation is ongoing and is, we'll discuss that in a little bit. Industrial campus, the earthwork, which is that, preparing the land for development, started in Q2 of 2023. We began vertical construction, which means building buildings, in Q4 of last year. And then we are just about to complete our first building. If you drive by on 26th Street or anywhere around, you can see it. That's expected to be completed in the next, in the next couple of weeks by the end of the year. We are about to break ground as well on vertical for building 2, and that is anticipated to be completed by the third quarter of next year. The innovation campus, the earthwork has been ongoing since early this year. Again, if you're kind of over on that side on Vera Avenue and 76, up toward 34th Street, you can see that that site's come a really long way. And we anticipate vertical construction, so the buildings themselves going up toward the end of next year. And then community engagement, what we're here doing tonight. Well, we're committed to continuing these quarterly public meetings on that are, both virtual and in-person opportunities. We held our in-person community resource fair where we presented on the project and had the ability to speak directly with us in an in-person setting back in late September. We'll continue to do that and look for opportunities to provide those in-person opportunities to meet with us and access the site, as well as continue in this virtual format. So we provide plenty of options for what works for all of our community partners. We'll go to the next one. Project goals, we spoke to a lot of this, so I'll be brief, but, we try to just orient our North Star every day when we work to develop the site around some of our key goals, right? One is reintegrate the site. We talked about this, but new connections to existing city street networks, new internal streets with bicycle and pedestrian pathways, providing transit access, working with SEPTA to ensure that we're building in transit, and providing offsite transportation improvements. So we're, not developing on an island, we're developing as part of a city and ensure that there's, traffic mitigation and capacity improvements. And then in terms of green pathways, it's the tree plantings, it's working to reduce the urban heat island effect. South and Southwest Philly has some of the lowest tree coverage in the city. So the project will substantially improve that. We also have efforts we're partnering with to plant trees in the neighborhoods around the project, providing, both safety and greening improvements through buffered sidewalks and protected lanes, with street trees and landscaping, and on-site stormwater infrastructure. And then creating a sustainable district, we looking to, again, develop as sustainably as possible, reduce the use of fossil fuels, and provide a pathway to significant energy savings and generation on site. Next, please. This is a little bit outdated, actually. We need a new one of these, but this is an overview of this is an aerial of the site when the deconstruction was so significantly complete, but it looks it's much further along now. You don't see the rings of the tank bottoms anymore. It just gives you a look at, you can kind of tell what it was and when there had been significant progress made. Go to the next slide. And this is an overview of our master plan. You can also find this on our website. I know it's a lot, so if you ever need to reorient yourself, it's available at thebellwetherdistrict.com. And then we'll start with the north 250 acres that are north of Passyunk Avenue. That's where we're planning our innovation campus. So think, life sciences, technology companies, sort of looking to extend University City, Pennovation, to the south, and have this be, a walkable, bikeable, campus where, hopefully we can retain Philly talent in Philly and also provide opportunities for, skills training for local residents in some of these jobs. I think it's important. I always think it's important to note that not all jobs in the innovation industry, particularly in the type of facilities we're building, require advanced degrees. Some of them do, but many don't. Then moving south to the industrial campus, south of Passyunk. This is where we're planning to, build more industrial facilities, logistics, warehouse, storage, marine uses. And that's, this is where we'll see some significant job creation, about 10,500 jobs projected. And, according to our economic impact analysis, at a minimum 50% and likely closer to 75% of these jobs will be accessible to individuals who don't have advanced degrees. So should be significant opportunity for local residents to take advantage. And next slide. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Blake Rowan to go through industrial site progress.
Yeah, thank you, Amelia. Hi, everyone. My name is Blake Rowan. I'm the Senior Vice President of Development at the HRP Group. I'm focused primarily on our industrial campus. Very excited to be here tonight to show everyone the incredible progress that we've made since the last quarter. So if you go through to the next slide. So everything shown on the right side of the screen within the red box is our industrial campus. Within the blue shaded area, that is 447 acres out of the 750 acres that we currently have permitted to date, and we've begun earthwork activities over the past 18 months. What that represents is nearly 2 million cubic yards of earthwork activity, so just a significant amount of progress. We're excited that we're nearing the completion of that first phase. We hope by the end of this year to be done. And then everything shown in the tan color within the industrial campus is what we're going to focus on our phase 2 of earthwork activities. We're currently wrapping up the permit process, and we're eager to get started here in the next couple of months. So just a lot of progress. If you go to the next slide, some of the fun facts we like to show, just the amount of pipe removal and that we've had to work throughout the demolition progress. As you can imagine, during the demolition of the old refinery, we spent a handful of years of just demoing everything that was above grade. And then over the course of the last 18 months, we've really focused on doing the subgrade demolition. So, we completed the 950 miles of above grade piping removal. Well, we were encountered with over 85 miles of utility and refinery pipes that we've removed, and we're continuing to encounter, each and every day as we work through the demolition progress. As I mentioned, our first phase of earthwork is about 2 million yards. To date, we're just over 1.7 million yards of soils that's been removed and relocated. Generally speaking, what we're doing is taking some of the higher elevated areas on the more northern portion of our site and relocating that earth to the southern portion of the site to balance it, and then raise the site out of the 100-year floodplain respectively, and then the building pads would be raised above the 500-year floodplain, as Amelia had mentioned. During the course of that earthwork activity, we created new sediment basins to handle and manage the stormwater. To date, we're able to manage over 45 million gallons of stormwater. All of that is then handled and pumped through to our treatment facility prior to being discharged into the Schuylkill River. During the demolition progress, we've been able to recycle all of the metal that we've encountered and all the underground pipes. We've removed over 6,500 tons of scrap, which is just a great amount of recycled material. In that, we've also utilized that same methodology on the concrete crushing. So as we've worked through some of the demolition, Amelia had mentioned the tank bases, but also just existing concrete structures that were previously used at the refinery. We're demoing, removing, and then we have a crushing operation set up on the site where we intend to reuse that recycled concrete for the future development. Next slide, please. So this is a great view from about the midpoint of our industrial campus, looking north towards Center City. Um, Lot 14 is currently in our master plan to be about a 1.2 million square foot industrial warehouse. That lot that you see that's fully mass graded is just about 100 acres, and you can see the limits of where our new Francis Harper Drive will go around that and connect to our new Hartranft Street. You have the building just to the north. That's our Unit 1 building that Amelia talked through, and we'll show you some progress on that on the next slide. And then just beyond that, you have another 48-acre site, which is for our second building. If you go to the next slide here, this is about the same vantage point, but looking south towards the airport. Our lots 3A, 3B, and 4 represent over 2.5 million square feet of new development. As you can see, some of the collection channels, that's that stormwater management that I had mentioned. All of that water is retained within there and then pumped up to our treatment facility. This is where the site was really low from existing grades. We've begun to place, that 2 million or so yards of material to raise it out of the floodplain. So that work is, as you can see, has made great progress, and we're, near completion by the end of the year. Next slide, please. So we've talked a lot about this in some other previous meetings, but our first phase of infrastructure has been really geared towards focusing not only for our first phase of vertical development, but really doing some of the major off-site improvements to provide, a grand entrance into the industrial campus. So what you see on the image to the right, everything shown in red is within the, on-site infrastructure, which is all the new roads and utilities that would provide to access to the buildings. And then everything that's listed and shown in blue are the improvements that, I'll show you on the next slide on 26th Street, where we're expanding the roadway, doing some new utility work and connecting all of our new utilities into it. We've made great progress on that, and we're eager to get that wrapped up over the first and second quarter of next year, and then move on to the next phases of development. If you go to the next slide, there's a great aerial photo. So here, as you can see, this is 26th Street looking north towards the city. I think this is a great image of just the overall progress, both on site and off site. As you can see, all the trench boxes that run along 26th Street, that's new storm drain that we've had to install. And it also shows the limits of where that roadway is actually going to be expanded and then widen all the way down to the intersection at Penrose and 26th Street. So that work in itself, we're wrapping up here. Hopefully into the early part of next year, we'll start pouring curbs. If you're driving down 26th Street, you probably see that we've actually made a lot more progress, and this aerial shows just as of this past couple of weeks, where we're starting to stone the roadway. I think we can really start to see the the new lane take shape, and we're excited to bring that online. If you go to the next slide. So this rendering I love. This shows really the intersection of 26th Street and Hartranft Street, and what we envision the industrial campus to be really in just a few short years away. So you can see just abundance of trees, the over 10,000 trees that we've committed. You have our first phase to the right where that building's really taking shape. You have a full new intersection that we've made great progress in. And then, really everything else is open, for the future master plan. We go to the next slide. So this is the progress that we've made to date. As you can see, this aerial photo was taken about a week ago, but you can start to really see where that new intersection is going. We have some of the new utilities that are going down Hartranft Street. You have our building going up just to the east of the photo. And then you have our lots 14 and 9, which are really to grade, and we're temporarily stabilizing them now to get them prepared for future development. Everything that's shown just to the west before you get to the far end of our site, that's over another 2 million square feet of potential development that we're eager to unlock. And then just north of our Unit 1 building, that's our lot 11, which could be anywhere between 1 and 2 buildings and another 340,000 square feet. And then just to the northeast portion of the photo, you see where our phase two, so that's the earthwork that I mentioned earlier that we're eager to get started by the early part of next year. You can kind of see where we started at the beginning of the earthwork, where you had some existing concrete structures, and really just everything is ready to be moved and get graded, and we're excited to get started there. If you go to the next slide. So our Unit 1 building, I'm sure some of you have potentially seen the conceptual rendering below, but we're actually starting to bring this to life, and we're super excited to bring the building online. This is a 326,000 square foot speculative warehouse. So speculatively meaning we do not currently have a tenant, but we're eager to bring one to our site into the city of Philadelphia here in the very near term. We've made just incredible progress. We're done all of our site utilities, the roofing's on, our overhead doors are being hung. We are going to be substantially complete by the end of this year. If you go to the next slide. So this is some of the progress that we've seen inside the building. This is our main entrance where we're gearing up for a spec office. This will be about a 5,000 square foot office, and we have new restrooms, excuse me, that are that's going to get started here, excuse me, in the next couple of weeks, and then we intend to, excuse me, we have new glazing going in. Obviously, everything is making good progress. Sorry, I'm choking. If you could go to the next slide. Sorry, fighting cold. Here's a great vantage point of the interior side, focused towards the east side of our building. Again, this is Class A office. We have it fully lit LED. The overhead doors are in. There's 90 positions, which will have full levelers, full dock packages, really just top Class A. We've begun to paint the interior side of all the precast wall panels and all of the columns, and starting to really get the building cleaned up and ready for future tenant use. If you go to the next slide, please. This is our Unit 2, so I mentioned. This is about a 48-acre site, 727,000 square feet. This is about over twice the size of our first building. We're super excited to announce that this building has started and is under construction. We've begun to start stoning the building pad. We've mobilized our contractor, that's Arco Design Build, and we've started foundations. We started laying out for foundations today, and so we're excited to really hit the ground running here. We're going to be working through the winter, but we think we'll make a lot of progress. We hope by the end of this year you're going to see the majority of the precast wall panels up, and then we're going to go full steam ahead over the first and second quarter of next year, and look to get this building wrapped up by August or September of next year. So just a tremendous amount of progress. This building is being built speculatively as well, and so we're eager to bring another tenant for this building here in the very near term. With that, I think I'll pass it along to our innovation team.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. Hi, my name is Amanda Mazey. I'm the Director of Mixed Use, and I'm focused on the innovation campus of the project. And I'll now take you through our current plans and status. So if you go to the next slide, please. So our first slide zooms in on the Innovation Campus Master Plan. Our site is approximately 250 acres, and we're currently planning 3 to 4 million square feet at full build out. Our campus is located north of Passyunk Avenue, just south of University City and Pennovation, with direct access from 34th Street, and is situated directly between the Schuylkill River and I-76. Next slide. Now zooming into our phase 1, our plan consists of approximately 40 acres in 500,000 square feet in 3 buildings. We chose this as our first phase because it's the closest to existing infrastructure and the surrounding neighborhoods with direct access from 76 and University City. These first buildings are designed to accommodate biomanufacturing, processing, and production facilities along with tech-oriented uses. Next slide. So we've spent the majority of this year focusing on progressing our earthwork activities on the Parcel A section of our site, which is what's highlighted in blue with the red box around it, which consists of the northern 100 acres of our sites. So we began subsurface demolition in March 2024, and then we began overall mass grading in May of 24. And we're approximately 98% of the way through of both of these activities with anticipated completion by year end 2024. Next slide. And then if we have a few examples here of site-wide implementation mitigants that we're employing for dust and odor control on the site. So I have them kind of listed here, and then a few corresponding pictures. We have installation of temp stabilization, including straw, tack, and temporary seed over the completed mass grading areas. We've installed dust control fabric along the perimeter fencing. We have ongoing perimeter air monitoring with monthly reports distributed via our website. We have water trucks that are traversing our site daily along the haul routes. And then we also have various odor suppressant methods, such as misting fans and foams, to be used as necessary. And then we also have a phone line and an online contact form to report any on-site activity concerns that's available at thebellwetherdistrict.com/contact. Next slide. So this slide shows an overview of the current earthwork activities on our site with an overlay of the future roads and our first two buildings. So we have Jackson Street and Fortin Way, and then Building A and Building B with two service drives as well. And this view is looking north with 76 and Center City in the background. Next slide. And here's actually a slightly more recent image showing our surcharge area for phase 1 buildings A and B in the northeast side of our site, which is a method to prepare our site for the future vertical buildings. And then also shown on this image is the temporary stabilization areas that I spoke to earlier that are directly surrounding the surcharge area. Next slide. And then here's just another view of the site. So this is kind of the northwest corner, also looking north, just showing additional areas of temporary stabilization and completed mass grading areas. Next slide. And then finally, a few stats on our campus as well in terms of, materials removed from the site. So we've removed approximately 210,000 of linear feet of underground pipe, 140,000 has been unknown refinery pipe. We've moved over 270,000 cubic yards of soil. And then we've also constructed 1.7 million gallons of new or in progress stormwater capacity. And we've recycled over 3,300 tons of metal piping and demolished approximately 30,000 tons of concrete for future crushing and reuse on site. Next slide.
Thanks, Amanda. And actually, you can go to the next slide. Hi, everyone. My name is Juliana Connolly, and I lead environmental remediation activities for HRP throughout the company and here in Philadelphia. I always like to start these updates in Philadelphia with a reminder, or for those of you who may be new, new information that there are two what we would call responsible parties on this property. And I mean a responsible party in terms of environmental cleanup obligations. Those two parties are ourselves, HRP. We took over environmental cleanup obligations that were the responsible of PES, the last owner of the refinery. And then also Sunoco and their affiliate Evergreen was a prior owner of the refinery prior to September 2012. And they are responsible for cleanup activities that occurred prior to September 2012. So the easiest way to think about who is responsible for what is, did the contamination get into the ground before or after September 2012? If it was before September 2012, that's Sunoco and Evergreen's responsibility. If it's after 2012, it's our responsibility. In addition to that, we also took on some additional responsibilities as part of our acquisition of the property. One of those has to do with closure of those many storage tanks that those of you who are familiar with the property would have seen historically. They've now all been removed, but as part of their removal, there is sampling that occurs beneath where the tanks were formerly located in order to close those tanks under the state's tank regulation. So that is our responsibility as part of our demolition work, and I'll talk about that more later. We also took on the responsibility to manage the soil that you heard my colleagues Blake and Amanda talk about, how we're moving soil around the site as part of the development. We took on responsibilities to make sure that that soil was managed appropriately during its movement, and I'll talk more about that on later slides, the things that we're doing to make sure that the soil sort of ends up in places that are okay and doesn't get moved anywhere where it shouldn't be. And the last thing I'll mention that is HRP's responsibility is what's called vapor intrusion. And what vapor intrusion has to do with is if there's volatile constituents, so constituents that can evaporate into the air, when there are volatile constituents present underground, there's the potential when there are buildings on a property for those constituents to move into the indoor air where people could then be exposed to them. And because we'll be constructing these new buildings, that obligation of making sure that that movement of vapors from the subsurface into indoor air doesn't occur. And I'll talk more about that later on as well. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the first thing I'll talk about is sort of the active cleanup activities that I mentioned, that we're responsible for any contamination that occurred after September 2012. And what I'm showing here is there are 8 areas where we know that contamination, so some sort of release either to the ground surface or the subsurface, occurred after that September 2012 date. And this is just, you don't need to be able to read the specific names on the drawing there, but that just shows sort of like where they are. And there are 8 different discrete releases. Some of these we knew about prior to our acquisition, some are discovered later, but these are the 8 areas that we know about that we're bringing through the state's cleanup program, which is called Act 2. And then if you go to the next slide, this is a table with 8 rows. Those 8 rows match the 8 sort of locations I showed on the prior figure. And this table is meant to just give an update on sort of our status for those 8 release areas. The color that I'm indicating in the text, where there's 3, you'll see where the text is green. What that means is that we've brought those 3 areas all the way through the Act 2 closure regulatory process. So those 3 areas are closed. No additional action is needed to close those areas under Act 2. So there are 5 that we're aware of now that remain open. And I say that we're aware of because we could find more as we continue to move soil and do demolition. So this list could grow as our work continues. So there's 5 that remain open that we're working on. And I'll point you to the third one, the area we call the UDEX release area. This is the largest of the post-2012 contamination areas that we're working on. And so we are operating an active remediation system in that area that consists of 2 different remedial technologies. A remedial technology that is called soil vapor extraction, and then also a sort of complementary technology that's called air sparge. And the simple way to think about how those technologies work is that it involves pulling the vapor, the contaminants that have again moved into the air phase, pulling them out of the ground in the air phase. So the contaminants are actually, for the most part, present in a liquid phase, either as a separate phase, liquid oil, you can imagine, or dissolved in the groundwater. And what we're doing is either pulling on the liquid phase, the oil, and causing it to evaporate and pulling it up to the ground where we can destroy it essentially. And then when it's dissolved in the groundwater, we're sort of bubbling water. You can imagine like blowing water through a straw into your water glass, and that causes a lot of bubbles. When those bubbles occur, the contaminants that are volatile also move into those bubbles, and then we can pull that air out. And the reason we want to move these contaminants into the vapor phase versus the liquid phase is that it's easier to move that contaminant mass in the vapor phase. It's sort of less sticky, it's lighter, it's easier to move. We can go to the next slide. I have sort of a conceptual figure that shows how that works. So you see the soil vapor extraction system at the surface, and then you see the well, or it's an example of a well. And so we're pulling the air up through that well, and we bring the contamination up to the surface where we can treat or destroy it. In this case, we're destroying that contaminant mass at the surface because the contamination that we're pulling out of the ground is very similar to gasoline, and we need electricity to operate the fans, the blowers that are pulling on the air. And so we collect that gasoline at the surface and we use it in the generator that produces the electricity that then causes that blower to continue to run. So that's a nice system that's been removing a lot of mass from that area of the site. What also I'm showing on this conceptual drawing is imaginary buildings. These aren't real buildings, but just so people can sort of see how the subsurface, the contamination in the subsurface, has the potential to interact with buildings above. And this is that concept I talked about earlier called vapor intrusion, where if there are vapors present in the subsurface, they could move to the surface and migrate into indoor air. And so what we do in that case, in addition to treating the vapors, which I talked about, to get them, to remove them as much as we can also install what's called a vapor intrusion mitigation system, which is what I'm showing in the orange beneath the building in the center of the picture there. And so what that does is it gives the vapors a way to sort of, instead of move into the building, they move out and around so that people aren't breathing them, and those vapors sort of avoid the place where the people could be exposed to them. And sort of whether that level of mitigation is needed, or if you look at the building that I'm showing to the right, if there are lower concentrations of vapors, we could also install what's called a vapor mitigation membrane, where it's a slightly sort of less complicated mitigation system where you're just sort of creating a physical barrier where the vapors are going to go to the path of least resistance. They're going to go the easiest way that they can. And so you sort of create a barrier that they can't cross. And you can go to the next slide. I mentioned another component of our work is closure of the many, many above ground storage tanks that used to be present on the site. We are working through the regulatory closure of those tanks. And as I mentioned, that involves a lot of sampling in the soil and the groundwater beneath the tanks, beneath where the tanks were present. As we get those data back, and we have lots of data back already because this tank closure work has been occurring for the last few years, what we then need to do is interpret those data relative to the existing contamination that is already there. As I mentioned, the refinery was present for over 100 years. There was a lot of contamination already present in the ground. So we have to sort of sort out, do these concentrations that we detected under this tank, does this indicate a release from a tank, or is this contamination that was already present? So that's sort of the phase of work that we are in now, is like sorting out, do these data indicate the potential for a new release or not? And then if they do indicate the potential for a new release, whether that, who would be responsible for that, whether it would be Sunoco or ourselves, depends on when it appears that release occurred. Did it occur before September 2012 or after? So there's a lot of work going on there, but we're moving through that over time. And you can go to the next slide. Soil management is another thing that I mentioned. So as we talked about, we're moving the soil at the site to get the grades, the physical elevations necessary for redevelopment. And what we committed to do prior to moving the soil is making sure that we knew what was in the soil that we were moving before we moved it. So all the soil that we're moving was sampled for chemical analysis prior to our moving it. So we know what's in it, and we have a soil management plan that's available on our website that documents that sampling and what we needed to do. Then based on the sampling results, the soil is grouped into different categories, so sort of less contaminated to more contaminated. And then depending on which category the soil is, there are certain places where it is or is not appropriate to reuse the soil. So you want to think about things like the more contaminated soil needs to stay farther away from the river. The more contaminated soil needs to be located under a place where there'll be a barrier eventually, things like that. So during our soil movement, in addition to characterizing it before we move it, sampling it before we move it, we also then have environmental professionals on site who watch the soil get moved to make sure that the soil is then located at its final position in a place that is appropriate and in accordance with the soil management plan. So lots of eyes on the soil as it is moved around is the big takeaway. The next slide. And then during our earthwork, we are also monitoring at the perimeter of our property for two things or three things. This red dot I'll explain after I explain the green and the blue dots. So the green and the blue dots represent 10 perimeter monitoring locations where we monitor for volatile organic compounds. So total volatile organic compounds. These are those vapors that I was talking about before. And we also measure for dust. So at the 4 green locations and the 6 blue locations, we have a total of 10 locations where we monitor continuously and in real time for volatile organic compounds and dust. That helps us so that we know in real time if we're starting to see levels at the perimeter of the property that we can like mitigate or do something about. So we get those data in real time. Our team gets notices so that we can respond, and it gives us a lot of information about what is going on at the site. The one red location that you see in sort of the south, near the southwest corner of the property, is a location where we sample on a weekly basis for one specific volatile organic compound, which is benzene. And we do that sampling in coordination with a group called Thrive Air, their community air monitoring program. So Thrive Air is sampling at multiple locations throughout the neighborhood, and they collect those samples. We collect the sample from this one location for them and share that data with them on a weekly basis. And I think that is my last slide. So I'll hand it back to you, Amelia.
All right, I'm back. And given that I am going to be rounding out the presentation, just a reminder to everyone who's on the Zoom to put any questions you have in the Q&A box. That's the box with the question mark in the middle, down at the bottom of your screen. We've already got a couple questions that we'll jump into as soon as I go through a couple of updates here on the community and workforce front. And as a reminder to everyone who, because I know some folks joined while we've been talking, we do post the entire video and video recording and slide deck and the written Q&A from the meeting on our website. Community and workforce, love this picture. This is of our 2-day Build My Future career expo that we hosted in coordination with a number of our partners in the School District Philadelphia earlier in October. I think it was like October 1st and 2nd. We were down at the 32nd Street Armory and had about 800 students from middle and high school come throughout the day for some very hands-on demonstrations. So great event. Next slide. I'll take you quickly through workforce development because I want to leave time. We already talked about job creation, but for those who just joined, the permanent and construction job projections are the result of an economic impact study that we worked with a third-party firm, eConsult Solutions, to develop. We've had over 2,000 workers, largely union trade workers, on site today. We are building union on this site. And we've committed over $2 million to workforce development programs, which that is, money that's been spent plus existing commitments for future funding for some of the multi-year commitments that we've entered into. Quick rundown of key partnerships. Career Connected Learning is our career awareness internship training program with the School District of Philadelphia, where we focus on school district high school students. We do target those opportunities to students that live in South and Southwest Philly, wherever possible. We are also a founding member of Everybody Builds. Everybody Builds is a fairly new coalition of the major building trades, large developers, contractors, and anchor institutions in Philly, where we're focused on sharing data, sharing information, and finding solutions for, number one, expanding the workforce pipeline to provide more opportunities, especially for diverse Philadelphians to enter, the trades and get family sustaining jobs, and then also to build capacity and opportunity for local, small, and minority-owned businesses in the construction industry. Build Latino is another program that we're part of with the Greater Philadelphia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce that is specifically focused on building capacity and opportunities for Latino-owned businesses here in Philly. CARP is the Carpenter's Apprenticeship Ready program. That is a pre-apprenticeship program aimed at diversifying the carpenter trade. We provide their toolboxes for all graduates each year. Clayco Rising is the diversity program run by our general contractor for our first building, Clayco, and a national program that we've worked with them to bring here to Philadelphia. We run a reentry program with 2 crews of returning citizens that work on and around our site through the Center for Employment Opportunities, which is a program that helps connect those who've been within the criminal justice system and seeking to, return and have those transitional opportunities. We've had a number of really great success stories with individuals obtaining full-time positions, both with our contractors and also with other employers in the area through that transitional work program. We work with 2 different women's programs, Women in Non-Traditional Careers, or WINC, which is aimed at post-high school age women seeking to enter the trades or to evaluate careers in the trades or to make career changes. We just had them out on site last week. And then MyWIC is a program called, it's Mentoring Young Women in Construction, focused on high school and middle school aged women who are looking to learn more about opportunities in this field. And we had them on our site this summer. That's the top picture there. And then we're also working to, as we move into vertical construction, where we have more opportunities for some of the finishing trades and other types of construction work. We're expanding partnerships, looking at partnering with Sam Staten Senior pre-apprenticeship program and Rosie's Girls, which is the IBEW women's pre-apprenticeship program. We've had a couple of our interns at the Bellwether District go on to that program, which is great to see that progress. Next slide. Career Connected Learning. This is a bit of a deep dive. I won't go into this deeply since I already mentioned some of this, but as I mentioned, this is our partnership with the school district. We had our full complement of 50 interns this past summer. They were all high school students. We did our first cohort of middle school interns this year. That was a great milestone for us. We did a spring break program for a week. Again, all of our internships are paid positions. We also provide transportation and nutrition to the students during the internship days where they're on site. We place interns both with our team and also with our major contractors and vendors. We've only got about 25 of us here on the team, so managing 50 interns would be like a 2-to-1 ratio. So we do work to place them with our partners, which provides different opportunities for students based on their career interests. We work with the district and other workforce development organizations to hold career awareness opportunities. I mentioned our scholarship earlier. We have a 10-year scholarship commitment to the Community Colleges of Philadelphia. Those scholarship opportunities are exclusively for students that live in the 5 zip codes surrounding the site. We do advertise those every year, so if you please keep an eye out for that if you know a student that might be eligible. We talked about this earlier, but we recently did our Build My Future event with over 800 students. We were at, was it last weekend, at the MyWick Block Kids competition, which is a really hands-on opportunity for much younger students to get exposures to career opportunities in construction. And we're working with the school district to sketch out, you know, what will probably start as a pilot program to provide driver's license and driver's education, we can't provide the licenses. Obviously, we're not the DMV, but we can provide driving education for students, because that has been identified as a barrier to entry for kids growing up in an urban environment entering the trades, as most of them require a driver's license. And we'll go to what I believe is the last slide. Oh, no, there's one more, sorry. Community benefits commitment. This is something we're really proud to be able to share with all of you. We at the Bellwether District, because we represent such a large area with so many diverse communities, you know, kind of ringing around the site, covering 5 zip codes. You know, we've been working since we acquired the site with a robust community advisory panel made up of local nonprofits, RCOs, CDCs, and kind of other, anchor institutions that act as ex officio members advising the group to, share information, get input on the development, and really get input on what the community's needs are, and understanding that's not, a single community. There's multiple communities around our site, and ensuring that we're understanding, the detailed and often complex needs and priorities. So when we agreed about 2 years ago to formalize a community benefits process, so there could be, continuity and assurances that we would continue to be investing in our communities. And so we worked through a 1.5 year facilitated process with our community advisory panel members. It was, as I really like the quote from Maitre Roy, who's a community advisory panel member from Bartram's Garden, where she said, it takes time and considerable efforts to work with this many organizations doing great work, and to make sure that voices are heard. But we concluded that process, over the summer, and came together to form a community benefits commitment. I'll go through sort of some of the key components. It is a commitment from us as the developer of the Bellwether District to the community writ large, but specifically to the community advisory panel members, who again represent, our entire surrounding area. It is a legally binding agreement for the financial investment elements in the agreement, and we're really, proud that it was signed by 16 of the organizations on our community advisory panel. They're all listed here, just so you can see that they represent, really the different neighborhoods around the site. This agreement has a 10-year term. There's an optional 5-year extension, and the projected total value of the financial commitments is $10 million. One of the, I think, sort of the marquee components of the community benefits commitment is the creation of the Bellwether District Community Investment Fund. This will be a nonprofit where we will deposit an annual contribution, starts at $100,000 a year, and it increases as the pace of development increases. And those funds will be directed to eligible recipients by a board that will consist of majority community advisory panel members and community representatives. We also include, non-monetary commitments, including ongoing community engagement, sustainable development practices, and publicly accessible green infrastructure, and continuing our workforce commitments and expanding those to provide skills training for the future jobs that will be created on the site. And I've mentioned this several times, but I'll just again note that we have committed to, targeting these investments to the zip codes and the neighborhoods surrounding the site to the highest degree possible. The entire commitment itself, the document itself, is available on our website, as is a press release where you can read a little bit more detail. Our website is, of course, thebellwetherdistrict.com. So please feel free to go there and check it out for yourself. And we'll go to, I think, the final slide. Upcoming events. We're getting toward the end of the year, so there's not many, but next Thursday, November 21st, we are, for the 2nd year in a row, hosting a Thanksgiving meal and turkey distribution with the Salvation Army and Resident Action Committee 2. That is open to all area residents. There's a QR code on this little flyer here. This is also on all of our social media accounts, and it's So if you wanted to send it to anybody, you could go look up our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever that is, or our LinkedIn, and you can see the flyer there. And feel free to please send that to anyone you know who might be interested in attending or interested in volunteering. Our team will be there volunteering. Throughout November and December, there's a number of community turkey and coat drives that we contribute the turkeys and or coats to. Please feel free to send us an email using the contact form on our site if you have questions about where there may be an event near you. We do work with different community organizations and partners to host those, so we don't like, those are events that we usually host with a partner versus ourselves. So we're happy to, based on your neighborhood, let you know where there may be an event in your area. And then in January, we will release our 2025 meeting schedule. So you all can get those on your calendar for next year. It's amazing to think it's already November. I'm going to go ahead and go to questions. Again, please use that Q&A format. My contact information is here, by the way. If you ever want to contact me directly, feel free to do so. We also do, if you go to thebellwetherdistrict.com/contact, there's a contact form that gets directly to us, and there's also a phone number to report any site condition issues. I will go in order and bring in some of my colleagues as topics demand. First, I'll answer. Jacqueline asks if we have any tenants yet. The answer is no, not at this time. We are building speculatively, but we have seen, due to, we've seen some improving market conditions and an uptick in tenant interest, especially since, I think as you can imagine, with something as complex as this site, a lot of tenants, prospective tenants need to see the proof of concept that the refinery infrastructure is removed, that the land looks like land that is ready to be developed, and seeing that first building and some of the infrastructure go up. We've definitely seen a corresponding uptick in activity. And really, we've only begun our full, in earnest leasing and marketing activities over the last several months. And so we expect to be able to make some exciting announcements very soon. Thank you for the question. And then I'll go next to Finley. Finley is asking, what capacity of public transportation are we planning? And do we have any data on the numbers of workforce that we expect to be able to commute by public transportation from different residential areas? I think, Amanda, I will, if you wouldn't mind taking a stab at that question.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So this is a really good question, and it's something that we're really focused on and consider integral to the success of our site. So it's something that we're working on a collaborative effort with SEPTA and the city, and also DVRPC, which stands for Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. So we've engaged DVRPC to complete a transit demand study that will project future ridership over time and evaluate potential transit improvements that we can bring to the site in a phased manner. It's anticipated that it'll take about 9 to 10 months to complete the study, and then we will update the community on the results and findings when that's complete.
Great, thanks very much, Amanda. I will go to the next question. This is from Edison. Congratulations, work in progress to date. Thank you. Noting that Lincoln University is nearby urban campus interested in becoming a training partner for workforce needs and support training and logistics. Who should you contact? And Edison, I see you put your email in there, so one of us will email you and set up time to talk. But I'll use this. So first of all, thank you for reaching out. We are always looking to have those conversations, and particularly as we, are going vertical, and we'll be creating some of those permanent jobs on site soon. So look forward to the conversation, and I'll use that to just make the larger point that if anyone is interested in either, partnering with us on skills training, or even, doing business with the Bellwether District, whether as a prospective tenant or as a prospective contractor or vendor, there is a specific kind of drop-down menu option for each of those things. If you go to that bellwetherdistrict.com/contact, and it gets to the right person or people on our team. Let's see, going to the next question. This question's from Ian. Ian is asking about odors that he's experiencing adjacent to the site. Interested in an update on our odor mitigation measures. Juliana, would you hop in here on this one?
Sure.
Thanks, Amelia, and hi, Ian. I know we've talked about this matter before. Consistent with the data that we share on our website, we don't see evidence of vapors originating from our earthwork activities that would be impacting offsite areas. And I can point you to those data. I think you may know where they are, but for anyone interested in that, you can look at the Bellwether District website, and then under community, and then under environment, there are monthly reports that we post that show our air monitoring data. So that is the VOC monitoring data that I mentioned, as well as the dust monitoring data. And those monitoring data represent concentrations in outdoor air at the perimeter of our site. With respect to vapors that may be migrating other ways or from other sources in the city, those are not necessarily things that we can speak to, but Ian, we can also share your question with Sunoco Evergreen and let them know that you're following up on that question, which I know you've been in touch with them on that question as well.
Great, thanks, Ian. Got a question here from Russell asking about whether we have any involvement in I think this was recently reported in the press, a fine from EPA related to the explosion at the refinery prior to our ownership. Russell, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that answer. I think I've got your email. We don't have anyone to call that could speak to that from our legal team. So we'll definitely get you an answer, but not something that any of us on the Zoom tonight are able to speak to at this moment, but just give us a couple days to get back to you. I'll give it another minute or two to see if there are any additional questions. Oh, and thanks, Russell. I got your email there. Making a note. Okay, well, unless any questions come in while I'm talking, we'll go ahead and wrap for this evening. Again, my contact information is here, so feel free to reach out to me directly, as is all of our social media. We do post a lot of, the events that we're doing out in the community there. We'd always love to see people in person if you want to come join us. And especially for the Salvation Army Turkey Dinner, if you're in the area and looking to either participate or volunteer, that's all over our socials right now. And again, you can also contact us directly using the bellwetherdistrict.com/contact for any issue you may have. And of course, if it's something urgent, we do have instructions there as well for a phone number to use if you need to reach us that way. We really appreciate everybody joining us and engaging, and we look forward to continuing these meetings both here on Zoom and also in-person opportunities in 2025. Thanks very much, and everyone, please have a safe and joyous holidays.